All right. Welcome, everyone, to season 4, episode 2 of Whiskey and War Stories. Our guest today is one that we're excited about, as always. He's local to us. His name is Chief Sam Gonzalez. And introduce him. Chief Gonzalez serves as the 23rd Chief of Police for the City of La Verne and brings nearly 3 decades of law enforcement experience to the role. Having spent over 25 years with La Verne, he built a career defined by service, leadership, and a deep commitment to community policing. Before joining La Verne, Chief Gonzalez began his law enforcement career with the LAPD, proudly served before that in the United States Marine Corps. Throughout his career, he held a wide range of assignments, including FTO, detective, range master, police sniper, tactical flight officer, drug recognition expert, patrol sergeant, detective sergeant, patrol lieutenant, detective lieutenant, administrative lieutenant, and operations captain. In addition to leading the La Verne Police Department, Chief Gonzalez remains active and is involved in regional public safety initiatives. He also serves as vice president of Los Angeles County Chiefs Association and sits on the executive committees of LA Impact, Area D, and the Los Angeles High Intensity Drug Trafficking, also known as HIDTA. Chief Gonzalez is a firm believer in lifelong learning and professional development. He holds a bachelor's degree of science in criminal justice management and a master of science degree in law enforcement in LEPSL program, which Jaime and I are big fans of, which is out of the University of San Diego. Chief Gonzalez is passionate about building strong relationships between law enforcement and the communities they serve, developing future leaders and advancing innovative approaches to public safety. So without further ado, let's welcome our guest, Chief Sam Gonzalez. Chief, how are you?
Good evening.
Thank you, thank you for joining us.
It's my pleasure. It's an honor. When you guys asked me, I kind of didn't know what to expect, but I'm honored to be here, see what I could contribute to your podcast.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you for
we're grateful, sir. Thank you.
Yes. Before we begin, something new that we're doing for the season is we're asking our guests if they want us to highlight any fallen officers that possibly resonates with them personally. And I'll read it, but Chief Gonzalez chose Filberto H. Cuesta, also known as Phil Cuesta, and he was an LAPD officer killed in the line of duty on Sunday, August 9th, 1998. Kind of looks like Ben Affleck a little bit. At the time, he was 26 years old and was serving in the Southwest Division. He was responding to a disturbance call in a 2-man car at a large party, which was actually a wedding celebration, when he and his partner were ambushed. Of course, a cowardly gang member attacked from the rear. He shot 2 rounds to the back of the patrol car. 1 bullet struck Officer Cuesta in the head, and despite his partner's efforts to both return fire and also stop Cuesta's bleeding with a tourniquet, the next day Cuesta succumbed to his injuries. At the time, he left behind his wife Sylvia and their 2 young daughters, Sierra Rose, who at the time was age 18 months, and Samantha, who was age 4 weeks, at the time of his death.
Wow.
Chief, why'd you pick Officer Cuesta?
Interestingly enough, I started, like you mentioned, I started my career with LAPD, and I was in training when Phil was killed in the line of duty. And the party that he responded to, in fact, I had responded to prior and actually issued a loud party notice to the person who shot him. So it's something that I hold near and dear to my heart. It really, I saw a lot of things that now resonate with me dealing with wellness. Then as a young officer coming through LAPD, I saw how our officers dealt with the death of Phil, and how officers really wellness wasn't really a thing there. It's just you just pulled up your bootstraps and then you went on with your day-to-day business. But it was one of the very first experiences that I had in law enforcement that really that I still remember.
Yeah, what an indoctrination to a career, being on training and then hearing that. Do you remember like the radio traffic or all that went down?
I do recall the radio traffic, and I believe there were 3-1, and I don't remember the exact specifics, but they had canceled us because we were the actual beat unit. We were 3 out of 1 when that went down, and they had canceled us because it was a known gang area, and we were almost into watch. I was working mid PMs at the time, and they canceled us. And when they responded, I remember the radio traffic as he was broadcasting, the shots rang out.
Wow.
Yeah.
What does that make you feel when being on training and this is how it's going to be? Or I can't even imagine how you process something to that effect.
Yeah, nothing really prepares you for that. I mean, as you indicate, I was in the Marine Corps, and the Marine Corps when I joined the Marine Corps, the first Desert Storm was going on in the Persian Gulf, and even then, the Marine Corps they structure their training in a manner where you're going out there and just doing everything you can to survive, but nothing prepares you for the mental aspect of that of what happens. So it was a difficult thing.
So you mentioned the Marine Corps. Jaime was in the Marine Corps, and obviously there's a lot of parallels with the Marine Corps that you bring over. But you started with LAPD, kind of the mean streets of LAPD. What was the biggest culture shock of stepping onto the streets from LA from the Marine Corps?
Well, the crazy thing is I grew up in Los Angeles, in the Los Angeles area. So I knew LA wasn't a, walk in the park. And it was something that, I know what LA is like. I know what it's about. It really, there's such a vast area of Los Angeles where you could end up at. And I end up at Southwest Division, which it even today is a truly, melting pot of culture. I mean, you got Koreatown, you got Hispanics, you got all the different cultures within that area. So it wasn't a culture shock in a sense where I didn't know what I was getting myself into. I went to school in East Los Angeles through middle school, and then my parents moved to Pico Rivera thereafter. So I wasn't unfamiliar with the area, but it was definitely a transition from the work and the design that the military has into law enforcement. In the job that I held in the Marine Corps, I carried a gun almost every day due to what I was in charge of.
And what was your MOS in the Marine Corps, Chief?
I'm still not catching what's coming out, Jamie.
Yeah, I could copy you, Jaime, but I'll relay what he said. Huh. He's asking what your MOS was in the Marine Corps, Chief.
I was a 2111, essentially a small arms repair. Worked on anything from Beretta 92F to you name it. I mean, we were taught everything, but the unit that I ended up with, the biggest guns we had were probably M60s before they were transitioned to the new 240.
What made you want to go from the Marine Corps to law enforcement?
What's funny about that is that it really wasn't on my mind. I thought I was going to make the Marine Corps a career. I had some uncles that were in the military that kind of influenced my decision. They talked a lot about Vietnam, and when obviously in high school, the war broke out, the 92 riots were happening, and I thought, heck, why not? Why not me? I'll go. And so I went down to the recruiting office, and I saw the Army, and I said, I don't really like that one. And I looked to the left, and I saw the Marines there. They were having fun. It looked like they may have had some whiskey on the desk, and I said, this is where I want to be. And I took the ASVAB and said, let's go. But unfortunately, they put you on the delayed entry program, and it takes forever to get you on board. So the Gulf War was pretty much over by the time I got to boot camp.
Yeah.
Okay.
Um, so, Chief, how would you describe the culture at LAPD back then? Because I'm sure, have you read the book LAPD Boot?
I have not, but I will
It's a really
definitely
good
add.
book.
I will definitely add it to my repertoire and take a look at that. When you're in the academy, they kind of tell you stories about what to expect, and you know, you sit at the front row. There's 20, 30 people in briefing, and if you look back, someone's going to say something to you, and you really had to handle your business then. And if not, you weren't going to make it. You weren't going to make training. But it was definitely something that I wasn't going to shy away from, and I was just going to, mind my P's and Q's and pass. At the same token, my wife had just had a baby. My daughter was born the day before I started the academy, and I said there was nothing that was going to stop me to fail. So, because I was going to provide for them.
Yeah, if you get a chance to read that book, it's called LAPD Boot, and it's written by an officer, LAPD, who went, maybe you even know him. There's only 8,000 cops in LAPD, but he writes about his rookie year in LAPD in the mid 90s. And just the way he describes it, you could just tell it's authentic. It's really easy to identify with, and it kind of makes you want to go 10-8 the way he describes stuff, but obviously it's not the way it is now. There's no BWCs back then.
No, it was very different in the late 90s. And, once I wheeled out to Wilshire, which was just north of Southwest, the streets, they're all the same. And it was easy to memorize the 100 blocks and so forth. But it was a very exciting time. I'm still in contact with several old partners, guys who I shared, because we would ride 2-man. And there's times where we talk. I mean, now I'm over 50, and we still talk about, I can't believe we did that kind of stuff and we survived.
Yeah. So, Chief, we're talking about LAPD, the culture. I'm no expert, but it's probably a little different than La Verne.
Oh yeah,
what made you want to go from kind of hardcore LAPD? Not that La Verne's not hardcore. You guys are very professional, great department that I respect, but as far as the type of calls that they handle in LA, it's different than La Verne. What made you want to go to a small town like La Verne?
At that time, I did roughly just over 3 years there with LAPD. At that time, we had no compressed work schedule. Like I mentioned, I had a daughter the day before I went to the academy, and then I had a second daughter. And there was things that I was beginning to miss. They had a scheduling system in where you put 2 days in red, and those were the guaranteed days potentially you could get, but it was seniority based and based on the needs of the department. And there was things that I was missing, and there was no opportunity to make a plan to say, okay, for this day I'm going to celebrate my kid's birthday, and that day would get swiped away and you'd have to work. And like I mentioned, I wasn't going to go against the grain. I was just going to work and make my way through until I got to some specialized assignment to where I would have a weekend off or whatnot. So the funny thing is that I had no idea about nothing. I knew nothing about La Verne. And one day I was coming home from work. As I mentioned, I was working mid PMs, even at Wilshire. And I got stopped after working 8 days in a row. And I had spent 2 days sleeping at the station because I had to go to court at 8 a.m. In downtown. So I would just sleep in the cot room and then wake up, go to court, and then sleep again, and then go right back to work in the afternoon. So I hadn't been home on my way in. It was probably 4 a.m. And you may recall I was living nearby. The end of the freeway ended at Foothill and Baseline in La Verne. And you would have to get off the freeway and take Baseline. I had to take Baseline all the way home. Well, it was probably one of those days where I was dead tired, and I see red lights behind me, and I'm like, what in the world? I'm getting pulled over. So I pull over. The officer thinks that I've been drinking and driving. Of course, I got my white t-shirt, blue jeans on, and I'm like, no, I'm coming from work. I'm exhausted. I told him the same story I told you about how many hours I've worked and the days I've worked. he didn't care. He was a DUI fanatic, and he truly believed I was drinking. I'm like, no,
Wow.
I'm just trying to get home. Well, after he figured I wasn't drinking, the supervisor had shown up, and they started talking to me, and they said, "Hey, La Verne's hiring," and they handed me a business card, and I'm like, "Oh, okay, cool." And again, I hadn't thought about it, and I happened to be off that following weekend on a Saturday, and at my father-in-law's, who was also in law enforcement. He had the Porak magazine, and in there it said La Verne PD's hiring, and it just kind of had an outline of the benefits. So I gave him a call, and ended up speaking to one of the captains who put me through an interview, and 2 months later I got hired.
Wow. Jaime, you want to give it a shot?
Yeah, I know you can't hear me.
Wow. You've held a lot of assignments in your long career. Sniper, tactical flight officer, DRE. Of all of those, which pushed you the hardest mentally? And do you have any memorable calls from any of those eras that you could share with us?
What challenged me the
Now,
most?
let's take Chief out of it, because that's pretty taxing mentally, I would guess.
Oh yeah, yeah. I was going to say that the chief one is probably the one that taxes you the most. I would have to say, of all the positions I held, um, I had a great time being part of FSET as a police sniper on the tactical team. My favorite of all was being a tactical flight officer. I was attached to a helicopter unit in the Marine Corps, and that was probably one of my favorite things to do. But I would have to say, when I got moved from being a patrol sergeant into the detective bureau, for some reason they said, "Hey, we want to put you in internal affairs," and I said, "Well, who did I upset to get selected for that?" And when that happened, really, and for a small agency, you kind of get like, don't talk to that guy because he's in internal affairs. So that was probably the most challenging of all, due to some of the relationships that I had along the way with a lot of people. I think that some people were reluctant to kind of be part of your circle because of that.
Yeah, no, both Jaime and I had similar career paths where, kind of like worked a lot of tactical teams, SWAT and gangs, that type of stuff, apprehension teams. And we both went to IA. And I remember, I've told this story before, but when I went to IA, it was like the worst news I could ever. I was pulled off of a multi-agency team because a staffing was going to disband, so they put me in IA. And I still remember that day, but like I always tell people, it ended up being one of my favorite assignments for two reasons. One is because it's the only detail in our whole agency, and I'm sure it's the same as yours, where you could be a worker bee investigator as a sergeant. You kind of put your sergeant stripes away and you're literally working cases and digging, and I just love that. Number two is you literally get a chance to treat people right. you just go after the facts. And I think me, Jaime, and some other guys kind of had a role in changing the perception of IA, at least with the troops, as far as being treated fair. But yeah, I could definitely sympathize.
Yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly in that, you have this perception of internal affairs, and I think where it gets that, where that culture builds is the lack of communication and understanding of what they are. And when I became part of that, I made it a point to kind of go over what the process is and what my role was with each person that I interviewed, and that I'm just there to find the facts and to get to the end of it, and then produce a written product for the chief to review and make a decision. That I'm not making any decisions, so it wasn't really taboo to share with someone the process of what was going on.
Gee, so with your background in all these units, detective, I imagine you saw a lot of crazy stuff, seen the worst of humanity. How do you keep yourself from being completely callous after seeing the stuff that you have?
I'd have to attribute that to my faith. I feel that aligning myself with my faith really has kept me, in tune with reality in life. And God has a purpose for us, and I truly believe that. I started with sex crimes, and if you've ever worked sex crimes with that, the things you review, the pictures you see, wow, what that does to you mentally. I really believe that staying strong in my faith helped me get through those investigations. In fact, a lot of the crimes that I looked at involving abuse of any type. I had children of my own, and they were young. And really, we all get into this profession, and I know it might sound silly, but we get into this profession to either prevent that or help those who have gone through that never encounter that again. So I really look at my faith as something that I stay strong to get me through that.
Yeah, definitely. Chief, is there any sexual abuse cases when you were in DB that you are at liberty to discuss that really hit you hard and you thought about it at 3 a.m.?
There were those sexual abuse cases where how could a father do that to their young daughter? And I'm going to try to keep it as clean as possible, but those are the ones that really disturb me. You look at children as pure and helpless, but for a father to do something like that to a child really bothered me.
Yeah, it's a lot of cops always say there's one detail they probably can't work, and they usually say sex crimes. And I would power through it and do it, but it's not my first choice for sure. So hats off to you for doing that, Chief.
Yeah, it really wasn't my first choice. It's just when I applied, that's what was available, and luckily I was only there for 2 years. In my third year, I went to the Berg desk, which was completely the opposite, right? But luckily, I didn't do it my whole span as a detective.
Sitting where you're at now as the chief of an organization, how big is mental health and wellness, especially in your position? And where do you see it has come from since when you began?
Well, I can go back to when I initially talked about when for the death of Phil Cuesta. I was a new officer. I didn't know nothing about it. The only thing that really the information we got is that if you got into an OIS, you got 3 days on the beach, and you had to go see a psychologist. But there was really no other reference and shared, or what was that going to be like. So you were kind of left in the dark, and then you just saw the people come back, and everybody went back to work like nothing. But there's another whole side to that really no one knows about. And then going through all these different experiences, investigating sex crimes. Again, no one ever tells you, hey, those types of things can really impact your mental health. I still remember a fire that I responded to here in La Verne, in where a family had gone out to dinner locally, and they left grandma at home with 2 kids. There was a fire that started in the garage, and essentially it was like a microwave. The house got so hot that the grandma and the 2 children pretty much died inside the house, but their skin was pretty much boiled like you would think boiling chicken. So when we were first to arrive, and we obviously had a crawl, and we saw the children who were still hugging the table, and we were like calling them over, but they weren't listening. So we grabbed them, and it was tragic because the skin on there really stuck to your hand. So when you look at wellness at that time, there was really, I believe they called the chaplain in for that, but it wasn't like, hey, let's call the counseling team or get some folks in. You just saw something pretty tragic.
Right.
In fact, I remember calling my wife that day just to check on my 2 girls to make sure they were okay. But you just went on. And now sitting here in this role, I look back at some of those things and what could we have done better to make sure that each officer who was exposed to that or experienced that can cope with that. when you, and I remember sometimes late at night, 3 o'clock in the morning, you wake up and you see these images in your mind. And no one ever teaches you how to cope with that. And I mean, I can go on with some of the other incidents that I've been involved in, very similar. You wake up like, oh, that image was just in my mind. But it wasn't until later in my career that, hey, there's this now peer support. And I believe peer support didn't come to fruition until about 15 years ago, almost halfway through my career, before something like that started sparking interest to most agencies. And that's when you were able to kind of confide in someone else and kind of talk through their experiences. And I believe that's what's really changing the culture in law enforcement, is really embracing it and taking that on. So I, as a chief now, I have like a three-legged approach, kind of like a stool with mind, body, and soul. And that's the philosophy I like to go on. And, your mind is obviously wellness. We utilize the counseling team. We also subscribe to Sharp Performance, which is a whole separate component to that, with several coaching features. And we have several other options for them to deal with the mind. And then body, obviously, as police officers, we resort to energy drinks quite often. The way we eat, the way we eat is terrible. I know in the academy they talk about lifetime fitness, but do we really continue to do that? So throughout the years, we look at ways of managing stress and managing that with your body. And things like fitness or gym reimbursements came to light. So now officers that go to the gym, they turn in a receipt for the month and they get reimbursed for going to the gym. We also have a wellness program where professional staff and officers are involved in bringing in companies, either providing health benefits as far as how you eat, nutrition type of things. We partner up with some of the local Nutri shops for supplements and things of that nature. And then we also brought in, instead of having a bag of chips and stuff from the vending machine, we took that out and we put a meal plan type membership in our break room. So now you can get a healthy meal in there. Instead of, you have now options in the break room where instead of energy drink, you can get an espresso right from the kitchen. So we kind of did that. And then lastly, you look at soul and like I mentioned earlier, I rely heavily on my faith. So we really incorporated the chaplain, and he comes in certain times of the week, sometimes Fridays, and then sits down, and then officers can come in, and those looking for spiritual guidance or help, or maybe dealing with something, can talk to him. So we hit the spectrum in all three of those legs when dealing with wellness.
Chief, you kind of triggered a memory for me as far as when you were talking about crazy calls you've encountered. You talk about sexual abuse, but you talk about way people deal with it. But a few years back in Pomona, I was in internal affairs, and I wasn't even on this call, but there was a call in our city of apartment fire, and there were two young girls. Jaime, do you remember their ages?
I do.
Yeah, I mean, 11 and 13, or
Yeah.
sisters. We found out later it was faulty wiring that caused a really quick fire. The girls were so scared that they were eventually found dead, like hugging each other. They could not get out of the window. Our officers got there shortly after. It was a blaze, and they were killed. Horrendous. To add to that, one of them died in the hospital a few days later. But while that one was in the hospital, she passed away at Pomona Valley Hospital. As soon as she found out, they found out that the second one had died. The parents went up to the parking structure at Pomona Valley Hospital, which was not even that high, which is even rougher. I mean, it's probably, if I had to guess, 30 feet high parking structure.
5-6.
Mom and dad went to the very top. They grabbed hands. They jumped. They fell on their head. All on video. Killed themselves.
Wow.
I've seen it. I have 26 years on, Chief, and I personally have seen a lot of trauma myself. I was feeling guilty about this because I wasn't there and I saw it on video. I was on IA at the time, and our job was to look at it on video and see which officers needed counseling. So I was feeling really guilty because it was bugging me really bad just seeing it. And then later I found out from my wife that, hey, there's a lot of people that have really bad trauma from viewing BWC. Their mind tricks itself into believing that you were there, which I thought was interesting. So of all the stuff that I've personally witnessed with my eyes, this one that I viewed on BWC is one that wakes me up at 3 a.m.
You know what's funny, Ryan, is and for the chief. Yesterday, just out of sheer coincidence, I had the opportunity to go to a peer support class out in Costa Mesa, and the class was taught by Dr. Heather Williams, who works for First Responder. A couple of the agencies have contracts with her. They work with CTI as well, and a potential future guest for the podcast. And she kind of talked about that. One of the things that was discussed yesterday, right? Cops, 20, 25, 30 years, they see hundreds and hundreds of shootings through their careers, these injured children, you name it, cops have seen it. But there are certain things that resonate with people, kind of like Ryan was saying, how this particular case with the children, the parents that committed suicide stuck with him. And, we become callous to a lot of these things, the shooting of the gangsters and all that stuff. But when we go to a critical incident or a tragic incident and it connects with us in some way, shape, or form, right? Either through smell, touch, taste, through your senses, through one of the senses, that it's those small incidents that we remember. And when we talked about this yesterday, I didn't talk about this incident at class. I think about my career over the last 20 years, and a number of the homicides, and the dead bodies, and so on and so forth. But I can't remember. I can't remember a lot of names of those victims, and a lot of the names of the suspects, and that's by design, right? Our bodies are sometimes they have us forget these defensive mechanisms. But one of the things that I remember in my career, and I remember vividly, I remember the way the house smelled. I remember the look of the people that were there. There was just a normal CPR call in the city. I believe she was a 70 or 80-year-old lady, had CPR. And I went on scene, and fire department was already there, had this 80-year-old woman to the hospital. And the husband had just come home, went out to the store, also in his 80s. And it asked me, hey, what happened with my wife? And I explained to her that she was in cardiac arrest and fire department was in CPR, and had transported her to a nearby hospital. And he says, okay, what would you like me to do? I said, well, why don't you meet me at the hospital, and we'll head down there. So when I got to the hospital, I had a little bit, walked into the ER room, and I asked the nurse, hey, what's the status on this lady? And the nurse had told me, we're sorry, she passed away. And I was a bit shocked. I said, she passed away? Yeah, she passed away. So I went outside. I tried to find the husband. After going one end of the house to the other, and he said, oh, officer, can you tell me what room my wife is so I can check on her? I had just bought her a Sprite from the vending machine. And I said, I'm sorry, sir, nobody told you? He's like, told me what? I said, your wife had passed. And I remember this man had fell to his knees and started to cry. And for whatever reason, at that point, somehow it made me think of my own parents. And I was a young man. I couldn't be on Pomona longer than 3 or 4 years. And for some reason, that call stuck with me, even to today, worse than any victim of a shooting I had ever been on. Mm-hmm. Worse than anything I've seen through most of my career. It was this call that just stuck with me. The fact that this couple looked like they'd been together a lifetime, and that had resonated with me because I looked at it as if it were my own mom and dad that were there, and my own parents have been together a lifetime as well. So I think that call stuck with me. I still think about it to this day. It still kind of gives me the chill. But it's those type of things that something that we connect with in some small way, shape, or form that causes us to remember it. I think if you were to tell somebody that's outside of law enforcement that you become desensitized to all these shootings and stuff, it might sound cold or callous and unorthodox for a cop to remember, a simple CPR call for somebody that passed in their 80s. But to me, it was a call that just completely stuck with me. So it's very unique in that way. I thought it was a good point when she had brought that up yesterday in the meeting.
Yeah.
So, Chief, I guess the question I have is, since you've seen both sides of the fence, been in law enforcement for a couple decades, where you are today, and you talked about a lot of the mental health and wellness programs that you guys have at La Verne PD. What do you think caused the needle to move from where you were at to where you are now, where it's not okay to be vulnerable and show emotions, to now it's almost as if you don't seek counseling or you don't connect?
Yeah, that's an interesting topic, because I think many people will agree or disagree with what I'm about to say. But I really think that the shift in the culture to accept it really in the 90s, we saw a lot of things, and to your point and your example, one thing that before I called my wife, I remember the parents showing up and the anger that they had for leaving and not being there. And I remember seeing them, and we'd had to keep them away from the house as the fire would try to get them. I remember that vividly. And you're absolutely right. But going back to your question, as far as where that change was, it's really hard to identify. But I would say that as we hired newer officers, it was something that they really looked for. And they looked for avenues to do that. And I think it wasn't until a conversation with, some of these counseling programs that they said, hey, this is what our people are asking for. And I think we should give it to them, where these programs started to really develop. Your peer support programs or whatnot. I don't know who created that idea, but it was a perfect idea to do that, to start at somewhere to where it grew from there. But I really think that it was your younger FTOs to now teach that. I really think that's been something that's where someone planted a seed and it grew from there. So that it has to be taught somewhere, right? Because I don't recall it, especially in the late 90s, my FTO ever saying, you're going to go see a counselor after you saw the death of whatever, or encountered an incident to that gravity. And it wasn't until we started pushing that down to our FTOs, kind of where the culture really starts on a lot of things, that talking about these incidents is where we need to go to make sure that we're taking care of each other the way we're supposed to. And the other part of that too is we look at police officer suicides, and what's the cause of that. And you look at the causation and where we could have done better to try to prevent police suicide. Really goes back to that. Perhaps if they had talked to someone, perhaps if they had done something about it. And throughout the years, we see the ebb and flow of police deaths, and suicide in particular really has a unique part of that, because what was it that mentally that we missed that we could have prevented? I hope that answers your question.
I was going to touch on that second. I think along the lines of what you said, that suicide is what moved the needle. In law enforcement, we're great at learning and we're great at changing, but only after a tragic incident or really bad thing. That's when we see the most profound changes in our profession, right? And I think the year people started paying attention to suicide rate in law enforcement and realized that it was down. The numbers were, somewhat off the chart. And I think because of that played a huge role in that shift from where, mental health and PTSD, we don't want to talk about those things. It was not, being a man or whatever the case is, to where we are today. And how far we moved and how far we're still going with respect to that. Sorry, Ryan, did I cut you off?
No.
Yeah. So in managing all that, running an apartment and making sure that you have, a top-notch peer support, wellness program, how do you balance that as a chief and as a husband, as a family man? Where's the balance in life, and how do you decompress?
Yeah, so that is a great question. I've been the chief now, if you count my time as acting chief, for about 3.5 years. And throughout that time, you got your periods of stress. And, like I mentioned earlier, I rely heavily on my faith and trust in God in a lot of what I do. But at the same token, there's all these different avenues. You look at that three-legged stool, right? And what else could I be doing? I'm often thinking of, we care for people, and as the chief of police, that's what I want to do, is care for people. But oftentimes, that guy in the mirror has those same issues or carries the same stress or on their back, and you forget about yourself. So luckily, as part of LA County Chiefs, we've brought some of those types of programs in, and vendors, to kind of give us an explanation of, hey, we're missing a key component here. You're caring for your people, but don't forget, we also got to care for yourself. So I've embraced it. And I talked a little bit about Sharp Performance. Those guys are a group of guys. I'm not sure if you ever heard of them. It was a company created by some retired Navy SEAL guys who provide a different platform. And they also provide different breathing techniques, different avenues to take. So it's not just one method or another, but you're trying different things to help you cope with the day-to-day stresses that come with this job. And, there's no shortage in those. Every day there's something new, either personnel related, community related, something comes up. It almost feels like every day is a Monday sometimes, but you go through it, and you go through the motions every day. And you finally realize, hold on, I got to slow down. Maybe I should take a vacation, or maybe it's affecting my relationship with my wife. So I really said to myself, I got to do something about it before it does have an effect on my wife and I and my relationship. So I said, I'm not going to let that happen, and really take action. And started talking to either a counselor or even a coach for Sharp Performance.
Hey, Chief, I have a question. We're in an era where, all three of us were kind of on the older side. We're on the downslope of this dance. And a lot of our cops are younger. And as you know, Chief, it's very important for us as leaders to connect with our troops and stay connected. And sometimes it's hard because there's such a big age gap. What do you do, or what advice do you have for people, lieutenants, captains, to try and keep that connection going?
I'll share with you something that growing up, especially with LAPD, you really never talked to command staff. And then coming to La Verne is kind of very similar. You saw them in the hallway, you kind of got out of the way, and you really never associated yourself with them. Mm-hmm. And like I mentioned a moment ago, we're leading people. We're not leading machines. And they have emotions, they have feelings just like everybody else. And just taking a moment to just talk to them, check in on them, really show that you care. They're not just a number. And that your life is not so busy that you cannot take a moment to to have a conversation with them. I try to do my best at attending briefings, catching people in the hallway, catching people in the parking lot, and just sometimes not even talk about work, just talk about family, because they are truly your work family. And really, sometimes you try to push some of these programs, and then sharing experiences that, hey, you may not do this now, but here's what's worked for me, and kind of share those experiences. I think myself as an officer, hearing that maybe from the chief of police, a captain or a lieutenant, really shows that we let our guard down a little bit to kind of say we're just as human as you are. And we have these same, we go through these same trials and tribulations. Just kind of be humble, really, and not really feel like your officers or your professional staff, you can't talk to them or spend time with them, but just take that time out of your day to really check in on your people. Even if you can't do it daily, at least make it a point a certain day of the week or whatnot to check in on your folks. More than 30 seconds, try to spend some time conversing with them so that you have a connection. Oftentimes, we're a small agency. I know Pomona's a little bit larger, but we see these folks day in and day out on a daily basis. And oftentimes they tell you about their family or their kids. And when you tell someone, hey, how did your son or daughter do at such and such event? You could see something in their face that they feel good, like, hey, you remembered and you care. I think that's very helpful. And we genuinely have to have that come across and not make it feel robotic.
Yeah, you hit that on the head, Chief. I had a conversation about this with somebody, I think last week, but I was saying how, especially, so I'm a captain, you're a chief, Jaime's lieutenant, but I try and go to briefing. We have 9 patrol briefings, so I try to hit all of them every other month, maybe 2.5 months, just because the way it works out. But anyway, when I go there, my 30 minutes there is crucial how I present myself. There's been command staff and other agencies, our agencies, captain, when he goes down to briefing, it's like, okay, we need more tickets, put your body worn camera on, right? And I think that's a wrong approach. I, as a captain, have very talented lieutenants, sergeants, and corporals to do that for me, to lay down the law, right? When I go there, it's important, like you said, Chief, is that I'm just real with them. I'm a real human being. I need to connect with them, and they need to know that I could sympathize with them, empathize with them as far as their working conditions, are they being held? I've been there before. I've been held. I have to go as real as possible for me to connect with them. And again, if I go in with a heavy hand, I just don't think that's my role all the time. So, great point, Chief.
Yeah, that's huge, and you're absolutely right. And communication is key. We just went through and our budget's about to be approved here next Monday, but you talk about the budgeting process, even those small things about how we're doing and what your goal and your mission is as far as the budget. You let them in a little bit, and you're fully transparent as far as where we're going. That resonates really well with the troops to know that, hey, you're looking after them. And you're trying to get what's best for them in all aspects. So you're absolutely right. It just takes a moment to not be that hammer, because again, your lieutenants, your corporals, your sergeants, they could all handle that. That's not the time for it, but there may be some other key points of, hey, where's the department going, where we're headed. You may throw them that as well, as far as an organization, this proposition is going to affect us, or this law is going to affect us, and here's how we're going to deal with it. Those types of things also, because if it comes from the command level, and you push that down to say, hey, this is how it's going to affect us, but this is how we're going to make sure everybody's on point by going through training or whatever the case may be. On top of what we just talked about, I mean, all of those are great keys to success.
Mm-hmm.
On the same topic, Chief, how do you keep people motivated? How do you keep your captains motivated, and your captains keep their lieutenants motivated? And motivation is always that big word thrown around amongst our line cops. What's that look like to you guys?
One thing that I really my philosophy relies heavily on decentralized command, allowing people to make decisions, allowing people. It's not my way all the time. Give me your ideas. Okay, I may or may not like them, but go ahead and put those in there. But I may tell you, hey, you may want to look at this or that. But allowing them to make those decisions without me looking over their shoulder really keeps them motivated, and it shows them that I trust them in what they do day in and day out, and that this department is not run solely by the chief of police. It's run through your captain, your lieutenants, your sergeants, your corporals, and your officers to do the right thing day in and day out, allowing them to do their job, knowing that someone's not behind them, holding their shoulder down. What are you doing? Why'd you do that? And whatnot. Allowing them to grow in their careers, allowing them to make those key decisions, obviously with the full understanding what my mission, vision, and goals are, and that they align themselves. You know, the old adage of we all need to be rowing in the same direction is key. And when one person's not rowing, you got to address that. So really allowing them to make decisions on their own. Of course, you know, with having those things in mind as far as the mission, vision, and goals of the organization, really what I feel, it keeps them motivated. And knowing that if they make a decision, it's not the end of the world if it's wrong, but we can grow from it and learn from it and move on.
Well said.
We can attest that you have a good captain. Previous guests on our podcast before. So you know, one of the things I learned, and I think Ryan was famous for quoting it, is you know, he would constantly say through the years, the mother may I. We need to get rid of the mother may I in leadership, because if you're not making decisions as a leader and you're asking somebody else for the answer to everything, then you know we could pay anybody to do that job and put stripes on it, right? Or call them a leader. Even you know, as Ryan progressed through the ranks, I think he kind of kept that mantra with him. And like you said, the decentralized, give power back to our supervisors and our leaders, give them the autonomy to make decisions. You know, and frankly, I think the three of us, we would say we'd rather you a bad decision than make no decision at all. Because you know we can teach turn bad decisions into good ones, but when you don't have the phone in the first place, that's intestinal and much bigger problem. You know, obviously.
Obviously, there's going to be those times where there is a decision that came down that comes from the office of the chief, that those have to be enforced, but those are far and few, and allowing them to be autonomous is really key. It really shows you trust them.
Yeah, absolutely agree. So when the time finally comes, something hang it up and close this chapter. What do you want in your legacy? What do you want your cops, your department to remember?
You know, that's a great question. You know, when you step into this role, it humbles you because they really look to you for leadership, guidance, support, and you know, you look at when you first start and the camaraderie that comes with law enforcement and your partners, and that ability to call each other family really is something that you carry forward. For me, I think what I would want my legacy to be is that we were a strong family and that we were united. And that's everybody, from the dispatchers down to your volunteers.
Awesome. Hey, Chief, one final question. I know that being a chief has its burdens, and being the chief of police for La Verne, you have a lot of stuff that weigh heavily on your mind, and a kind of maybe a hassle for you. My question is, how do you handle the biggest hassle burden that you have while That's to supervise Captain Travis Tibbetts.
You know, you know what's funny about Travis is that he's grown on me. He's
Yeah,
grown
same with
on
me.
me,
Same with
and
me.
he comes with a comedic value.
Sure.
And what I mean by that is I can give him something to do. I can give him a specific task, and he makes a joke about it, like, "Damn, your Marines want everything perfect." And I said, "Well, the Marines are the best, and what I want from you is the best. And then when you put your name on it, it better be the best, because, for example, you turn in an assignment in." And it's got your name on it, and you get a B or a C, is that truly your best product? But Travis always has this comedic value, or brings this comedic value, because this is such a serious job that he'll tell you, you know what, this is probably not my best, but can you take a look at it? So he brings a little bit of brevity to the table.
He does. Now, good guy, and like you said, comedic value is key. If it wasn't for us making jokes all the time, the stress would just build up for sure. Yeah,
It would take over.
for sure.
But I do have one last question. I was closing it up, but I wanted to ask: what keeps you up at night, Chief? What is your biggest burden as command? What keeps you up? What keeps you up at night?
There's one thing that, or several things that happen before I go to bed. Obviously, you take your vitamins and whatever medication you take before bed. But I have to go back to my faith. I thank God for the day. I kiss my wife goodnight, and then I'll say a prayer. And what keeps me awake is getting that phone call in the middle of the night to say that someone was injured. One of my officers, or anyone in the department is injured. So really, that's what it's what probably I end my prayers with, to keep everybody safe in what they do day in and day out. But I think it's the worry that's a possibility.
Yeah, and, obviously fine words on the burden of command. Chief, do you have anything else you'd like to say before we wrap the episode off?
No, I actually just want to say thanks. I didn't, like I mentioned early on, I didn't know what to expect. My first time on a podcast, so you guys broke that streak of not being on one. But I appreciate you guys bringing me on. These are great topics, dealing with wellness, and you hit all the key points. And I think whoever listens to this, hopefully it catches on. And if they're struggling with something, that there's options out there, and that they shouldn't be afraid to go after those options and seek wellness for themselves, either for their mind, body, and soul, so that they can survive this career, because it really will haunt you if you don't.
Thanks, Chief. Season 4, Episode 2, with Chief Sam Gonzalez from the Verne Police Department. As is customary, we also dedicate an episode to a different whiskey. This particular episode, we are drinking a whiskey known as the Commander's Own, and it's from Just Us Whiskey Company. It is a veteran-owned whiskey company from the 31st Infantry Division. And what's unique about this particular whiskey is we had one of our followers, Don Young, with us, and asked if we would like to sponsor whiskey in one of our episodes, and simply dedicated to to our veteran community. So thank you to Don for dedicating this bottle. We appreciate it. Very tasty. And on that note, that concludes Season 4, Episode 2 with Chief Gonzalez. Thanks again for listening. You can follow us on Spotify, YouTube, Instagram, and Amazon Music. Buddy,
Awesome.
appreciate it.
Good night.